Hey, what's going on there, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of the Scary Dad Podcast. My apologies this week. I have just been behind trying to get some stuff ready for the show and new websites and vendors and artists and all kinds of other stuff, so I did not have a chance to do the normal old business, new business, but it's still going to be a great show for you guys. We got Mr. Johnny Stitches of Sirenicide in with us today to talk about Game of Thrones. Johnny joined us on a couple of upcoming episodes that we'll be peppering around through the next couple of weeks, so looking forward to that. And without further ado, we're going to get straight into the interview right after this message from our sponsors.
Game of Thrones is back.
Bring me one of those chickens.
And KFC is celebrating with deals that can feed the hound. 8 pieces of the Colonel's famous chicken, any recipe.
I think I'll take 2 chickens.
Or add a second chicken and a side of our mashed potatoes and gravy, coleslaw and biscuits.
I'm going to have to eat every chicken in this room.
Or try our every chicken in this room deal. All this for only $19.99.
You're going to die for some chickens.
Someone is.
The KFC Game of Thrones meal deal. Now available Dragon Grill.
All right, here we are. Guest host, spot. We are with our good friend, Mr. Johnny Stitches.
What's up, everybody?
So are you Mr. Stitches or Dr. Stitches?
I guess in this life, I'm just Mr. Stitches.
Rock and roll.
Dr. Stitches, he's fictional. He's made up.
Right on. So how you been doing, man?
Man, I've been busy. Freaking the whole summer has just been... I wish I could just go slower. I can't believe the 4th of July is like literally in a few days, it feels like.
Dude, I'm telling you. And, well, the only good thing is because I work out, well, I'm not in the heat, but I'm in my car all the time. So
right.
Usually, because I'm going from place to place, I'm not in my car long enough for the AC to actually cool it down.
Oh.
So I feel every one of those triple digits, all those heat indexes, I'm right there. Oh. And usually by the end of the day, it took a little while. My wife's like, are you okay? I'm like, get home from work, strip off clothes, turn on the fans, and just take a nap for like 20 minutes, just trying to cool down and right. Catch up. We hit that heat a little early this year, and so it drives me nuts every time we get that little crisp early fall, kind of maybe like mid-September, and it drops into like the 80s. And then people start being like, it's so cold. And you just want to stab them.
Oh, yeah. No. Let the winter rain as long as it can in Texas. Oh, man. No, it's for us, it's just been, we're in the off season of Sirenicide right now, which is our first ever real off season. Our show typically has seasonal structure, but then during the off season, we release mini episodes. And we've done that for almost the past 3 years. And this was our first one where mini episode 38 literally ends. And season 4 doesn't start until September 17th. So it's like, well, in the podcast world, obviously, you don't release episodes, your fan base starts unsubscribing because they think it's a dead feed. Because podcasts go off the air all the time without telling anybody. Mm-hmm. It's like, I guess that's not a show anymore. And we don't want to do that, so we've been doing interviews very much in this kind of style, back and forth. We've released 3 of them already, and we're working on, I think there's 17 more. So that's kind of cool, and that's really been the gist of it all, is just getting that rolling and figuring all that out. We've always been a very horror drama podcast and not a commentary podcast. So it's been like last night we recorded somebody that came over, we did the transitions, we lined it all up. I mean, it still took about an hour and a half to mix down and get everything nice and polished and put out. And I say polished, they're unedited, unscripted, much like this, which is that's why I enjoy y'all's show so much, because that's the format I love. Like, I'm a big fan of the Bill Burr podcast and stuff, because there's no jump cuts, there's no nothing, there's no, let me take the ums and the ands out of every sentence and the likes and all that and the breaths. So
that was one thing whenever we started the show. I was listening to another one, and this dude does a podcast every day. And it's not even anywhere near our vein, but it was sort of inspirational for me. It's called the Survival Podcast. And what he does is he does like a lot of modern homesteading. So it's not like survivalism, like you think, dude with an AR tromping around the woods. It's more stuff like, common sense preparedness, kind of the stuff that we live with, living in Hurricane Alley.
Right, exactly. Like having MREs in in a space where they can, don't throw them in your attic. You put them somewhere where they can be stored properly.
Right. So like common sense, like food prep and stuff. But he does a full on hour-long show every day, Monday through Friday, for the last 10 years.
Wow.
He'll go on vacation and he'll run replays of old episodes and stuff, but that's what he does. So he's extremely prolific. And
nice.
When you're doing that, many subjects branch off into many others. And he's done one way to be common sense prepared is to start a side business, start a side hustle, start a podcast, start a website, whatever. And people would call in and ask him, like, what kind of mic should I buy? What kind of thing? And he's like, dude, just do it. Sit down. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. You're going to suck. And the only way you're going to get better is to do it, is to practice. And he says, when you go back and you listen to your old episodes, you'll hear a whole lot of ums and ands and stutters and stops. He goes, if you edit them out, you won't hear them. You won't know how well you've improved. Right. It's like, and if you edit them out, you're going to edit it all down. It'll be only like 4 minutes long. Like, so just do it, and then you'll get better over time. And listen to your old shows as a barometer for your improvement. Right. So that's what we did. And when I go back and listen to the old ones, they're fun, but there are a lot of verbal fillers. And now we've knocked out quite a few of them.
Yeah. You can definitely tell, like, over time. Like I went through. I still have not reached y'all's complete backlog, just because of. Like, I read an audiobook the other day, and when I got done with the audiobook, I was like, oh, shit. I'm like 30 podcasts behind now. And then it gets so daunting, and you start choosing, maybe I don't want to listen to this show anymore, because when I go down to 30, I'm behind. I keep bumping, I'll listen to that one. I'll listen to it again later. So I try to not do that. So I went, I think when I first started listening to y'all's show, which was over a year and a half now, I think, yeah. I went back and I just go through the titles. Oh, I'm going to listen to that one. Let me listen to that.
I kind of do the same. Yeah, when I go back to listen to old ones, I was like, that was fun. Yeah. Let me hit that one.
So I do that. I did that. I do that with a lot of like the commentary style shows, which is still probably, I know it's just sacrilegious producing an audio drama, but it's still one of my favorite obvious mediums, because it's like you're hanging out and talking with some people you've never met before. Like that famous poster, I love that podcast meme where it shows the guy, the kid sitting in front of an ice cream advertisement eating an ice cream cone, and he kind of looks at the kids that are smiling holding the ice cream cones, and it's like, this is what I feel like listening to podcasts, because he's by himself with a picture of 3 kids eating an ice cream cone.
My buddy Terrence told me that. I was asking him to listen to a couple episodes and give me feedback, and he's like, I want to respond. He's like, I want to disagree, or I want to throw something in, but I can't. Yeah. He's like, so, like, that's always fun.
Yeah, but it's a good medium, man. It keeps me going. I survived on music for so long, and then I went to audiobooks for a few years, and I'm so glad that I returned to podcasting, and I'm able to mix those up, like, and it just makes my work week so much easier.
I've been in my car literally every day for 15 years. And this last year and a half-ish, my assignment, my territory's gotten quite a bit tighter. So the distance between visits has been significantly decreased. So I'm actually in my car a lot less this year than I have been in the past. But it used to be, man, I could tear through a couple of hours a day in podcasts easily. Now I'm lucky if I can get through about half an hour, 45 minutes, if I'm lucky. So I have to pick and choose. So like those long, no sleep episodes. And so it's like, how long is the story? It's like, okay, that's going to take me a couple of days, a week or whatever.
Yeah, well, for me with no sleep, I mean, I love no sleep. And I bought my first season pass, I think it's 4. But the last 2 years I have not. No, I bought one at 11. I guess we're at the end of 12. I have not bought 13s yet, and I didn't buy 12s. Just because I'm like, not because I don't want to support the show. I support the show with merch and other items, obviously, but just because I'm never going to get to it.
There's so much content.
There's no way. Now, maybe once Sirenicide winds down out of the serialized structure a little bit, I'm hoping a little bit more time will free up. But I've already started, I've already started jamming with Eon Code again, and I want to start, playing again and do some things like that and mix it in with the anthology structure that we're going to be moving to Sirenicide with. So it's probably not going to happen.
See, and the thing is, when you are, whether it's professional or hobbyist, but whenever you have the different masters that you serve, like music, my old band, I probably told you last time, I was one of 3 founding members of a cover band 15 years ago. And the core band, the 4 of us with a drummer, and when I say the 4 of us with a drummer, there was 4 of us that were like the core band, and we had a drummer that was with us, but he was a drummer. He wasn't really part of the gang.
Right.
And then he moved away right around the time I quit, and we never talked to him again. They kept going, and they brought in new players, and in the last 10 years, they've had kind of a revolving group of players. And Kyle and Dennis was the original guy that I started it with. Those 2 guys have kept it going this whole time. We ran into them not too long ago, and they were like, hey, we're about to do a 15-year anniversary. You want to come back and jam some songs? So myself, one of the other drummers that I played with in another band for a while, the original bass player, we're ramping up to do an anniversary show.
Okay.
And I got a list of like 20 songs that I used to be able to play cold. Like, I used to just be able to walk up on stage and you could call one out and I could play it beginning to end. And I'm like, I remember how they go, but I'm having a hard time with the muscle memory, keeping my fingers going that long. Because 20 songs, about an hour and a half.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, just trying to get them practiced back up. So that's what I'm doing at night. Like, I'm sitting there writing stories, and whenever I get blocked, I sit there and like try to remember how to play Rebel Yell and stuff.
Nice. That's cool, man.
So that'll be like in
badass.
October.
Cool.
I'll keep y'all.
Keep us posted. I like this. I definitely see that. That's cool.
Be fun.
Heck yeah, man.
Well, I guess let's keep it topical. Let's. We got a couple of things. Let's start at the most recent. So, I never got a chance. You and I chatted briefly, but we never got a chance to talk about Game of Thrones.
All right, let's make this the Game of Thrones one. Let me pull my Game of Thrones list out. So
I know from you're actually on another podcast that talked about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, the guy that plays the mayor of Morston in the Sirenicide serialized drama in the fictional city of Morston, which is Mock, Houston, Texas, if it's your first time. I know you've brought us up a lot of times on the show, but just in case, first time somebody's hearing that, plug for Sirenicide, but it's the guy that plays the mayor. His name is Duncan, and I actually a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, he was on a show called the Walking Dead cast, and it was a companion Walking Dead podcast I used to listen to, and I loved his voice. He was always doing like impressions of people, and he can nail Beavis and Butthead like perfectly, man. And I was like, man, and it just kind of stuck in the back of my head. And then fast forward years later, and we started doing the podcast, and he started hosting this podcast called Game of Microphones. And they started doing this series rewatch from the perspective of somebody, I think at that time, who had seen all the way up to season 6, which I was caught up. So you get to listen to people like spoil the shit out of it because they're all caught up, which is nice. Because you don't know, like, oh, well, they're tiptoeing around the fact that this person and this person are doing this.
Right.
So you don't got to worry about any of that. And so I started following that more and more. And he ended up just taking the show to a whole new level. I mean, like 4-hour deep dives. Like, massive episodes. And I started, just writing into him. And, there's a the listenership of a podcast is such a weird thing because you can listen to like 30 podcasts like I do, and I've made sure like I've gone through and rate and reviewed all those. Mm-hmm. And every now and then I'll put a rating on one. Like I remember what show? I guess I shouldn't name drop, but I went to go check what my review was on this one show. And when I checked, I was like, oh shit, I've never reviewed these guys. I've been listening to them for like 2 years. And that's like,
sacrilege.
Not really for me. I don't, great, it'd be cool to be way up into the we do it periodically. Hey, if you can give us a rating review, great. If not, whatever. We're not trying to make millions of dollars off this thing or anything like that. But for the guys that are, this is their day job.
Mm-hmm.
Rating and review is lifeblood. So, I went through and I reviewed it, and I sat there. I was thinking, man, this guy's really, really got something I like. I want to write in. So I started, messaging him, and I finally just said, hey, I got a podcast of my own, and I ended up telling him I just finished all the Game of Thrones novels a few years ago, and we were talking, and I said I got a serialized podcast I've been working on, and I shot him over the first season, it had already been on air, the links to it and all that, and he got with me immediately. He was like, dude, whoa, and apparently a lot of people in the podcast land, hello, don't realize that, when you sit down with somebody at work or something like that, you say, hey, what'd you watch last night? I watched TV.
Right.
You don't ever do that. You say, last night on TV we were watching, Grey's Anatomy, or we were watching Game of Thrones, or whatever like that. You don't ever just sit there and go, hey, we were watching, TV. And what was on TV? People talking. But with podcasts, you tell people, hey, I got a podcast. They immediately go, oh, what do you cover?
Yeah.
Sports podcast, TV podcast, movie podcast, a hobby podcast. No, we're an audio drama. And then their brain just skews. What does that mean? You bring up Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and all these things, what audio dramas were in the 40s, and it kind of gets their head kind of wrapped around it. And that's kind of, I think, where he was. And then when he played it, he's like, dude, this is like a freaking movie for your ears. This is, how do you have the time to have the doors open and the chair pull out? And I go, trust me, it's a ton of work. It doesn't just snap your fingers and it's done. But I was like, I'd like to have you as a guest on it. And the more and more, I sent him over this little blurb of a JFK style reading, because that's the stammer I want him for the mayor to we will not sit here and listen to you tyrants berate us about this. We are going to go forward.
Right.
And he freaking sent me the audition back of Malik, and I was like, oh my God, that's him.
That's awesome. That's
the mayor. That's the guy who's going to start dispelling the evilness of this city. Our evangelical freaking mayor. And but he's Game of Thrones on the level that I am Star Wars. He knows all the ins and outs of all, not just the core books or the core of the show, but all the companion pieces, all of the Duncan Egg novellas, the Fire and Blood books, all the supporting historic. Yeah, he got it. Rolling encyclopedia, man.
Wow,
awesome dude. So
even George R. R. Martin's now like that.
No, yeah, even George Lucas back in the day was he'd hire a team. You're familiar with Desdemona.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what she is for Sirenicide. She's my lore master. Yeah, she chronicles our show. I'll finish writing a script and I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure there's no plot holes in this, but can you purify it for me, please? And every now and then she'll be like, this guy wouldn't really be able to do that with this power because of what happened with this situation. I'm like, oh shit. So I go in there and restructure it.
That's cool.
Because it's so vast now. But Duncan, I started guest hosting on his show during the rewatch, and then during season 8, I did I think every one but one of the after shows, the live. I'd only seen it once. It's fresh on the brain. Mm-hmm. No time to digest it. No time to even listen to Benioff and Weiss's little 10-minute thing after, or the 40-minute thing they released the next day. None of that. Just straight out of the living room into the box. This is my raw thoughts. Which is nice because the next day I'd go back and re-listen to my thoughts and be so they'd be all there. And then when I sat down to rewatch it again, because almost everybody watches the episodes at least another time to redigest it for better or worse. Okay, I didn't notice that time. That's why everybody's pissed off about that part. Okay, that makes a little more sense. But
so what did you think? Not in totality, but just kind of the way that it wound down in the final season, just kind of in general.
I don't think it's to the point of Watch Mojo's #1 failed series
agree.
ends. I was watching where they had the ending of Dexter, all these different shows that which I like the ending of Dexter. I guess I'm just I'm a retard apparently of that. I don't understand how movies are supposed to function and how TV's supposed to, because I'm I love the way Dexter ended, but they had ranked it #1 was.
See, the reason I think it would do that is because Lost, for example, lost its way 2 seasons before the end.
Yeah.
Or you could even go further back. I mean, they had a really good core group of things that they could have explored, but they kept opening new cans of worms.
Well,
and so by the time that they decided they were going to close it down, they had so much that they needed at least 2 or 3 seasons to close them all, and they just kind of like, oh well, nope, everybody's dead.
Yep. And that
was failed with Game of Thrones because it was so well done and so epic and so stratospheric level.
Right.
To have the disappointing ending that it did, then that gap is there, and that's what I would think would put that in that number one, because Dexter wasn't as well loved as Game of Thrones.
Right.
Lost was not as well loved as Game of Thrones.
No, Game of Thrones was a pop culture freaking phenomenon, but like my biggest issue with season 8 and season 7 to a degree is just too rushed.
That was pretty much mine.
But I mean, like when I start going through to show you how prevalent they are, when I started going through and looking at the list of, well, what happened with this lady, and they showed the Red Priestess that was talking in the courtyard in Volantis, and like, how come we didn't tie up that loose end? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even realize that was one. Thanks for pointing it out, random meme. And then the next one was like, like where and what is Dario doing right now in Marine and all that. Like, how did that end up? How come? Well, it's like, okay, even if they would have had 10 more seasons, there was no way to like give you a fulfilling end for every single character that was walked onto that show. It just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And the other issue with, I think that, and this is again my opinion, obviously, which is highly contested and debated, is I think a lot of people in their minds feel like Benioff and Weiss just took this and just like ran with it in left field, when it's not like they didn't sit down with the show's creator and say, this is the direction we're going, and the guy's like, no, that ain't gonna work at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll get those clickbaity like articles that at first, right when season 8 ended, they were trying to use that backlash to like that ability, but now you start going back and you realize a lot of those articles aren't there anymore because it was just clickbait.
Of course.
Because not that he agreed with it 100%, but at the end of the day, it was Benioff and Weiss's show. Not their. I mean,
my main quibbles with it was exactly that. I didn't necessarily have the hugest issue with the way that each individual storyline ended specifically, but we went from like 3 or 4 or 5 like sometimes entire long episodes on developing this one character to develop some certain story arc, and then it just ends.
Yep.
Which is pretty George R. R. Martin. Like, he did develop in the books a lot of characters that just met untimely ends at random, because that's how war really is. I mean, no matter how virtuous or how evil you are, any spare arrow can just take you out at any given time, right? But there were certain character arcs, like, I was not a fan of the end of Daenerys' character arc. She did not need to burn King's Landing, and even, like, all the excuses, like, oh, well, John left her, and she was this, and she was that, and she was that. And she was destined to fall eventually.
Right.
But the problem with it was her entire story arc has been to protect the innocent. And she's been pretty strategically right on throughout the whole thing. She's made some mistakes. She's had some missteps. She's got herself beaten up and lost and shot out of the sky and whatever. But all she had to do was fly around to the back of the city and take the castle itself, destroy the tyrant, and nobody was standing against her. So she didn't need to rule by fear at that point.
Right.
And then knowing that the dragon was that powerful to begin with, that just single one, because as her dragons were falling, the sidekick, the bad guy, the evil wizard, the maester, what's his name?
Oh, Qyburn.
He even's like, your Dothraki are gone. You're
right.
Everybody's beaten and tired. We're at full strength, and you've only got one dragon left. Well, yeah, you only need one if one can take out the city.
Yeah, it's a WMD with the brain.
So, I mean, she could have just taken out King, the Red Keep, and at that point she could have started her spiral into tyranny, but you would have had to have a longer...
A season of taking her down.
Which would
have been an amazing arc to...
But her just burning the city, all of the goodwill that she built over all of the seasons got just destroyed in one determined flash. And that was out of character. It was so out of character, it was shocking.
Yeah. With me on that, though, I love that.
It was awesome to watch.
Not just the visuals of it. No, I mean, as far as... Okay, so in that moment, when they're at that fireplace, and, all he would have had to do is basically take her to bed or something like that, which is already kind of feeling awkward in his brain with all the new info, filling in all those gaps of I'm more of a Stark, I'm not really a Targaryen or a Lannister for this. It's just, and that feeling was manifesting within her, where she's been all she knows is her lineage has always been like that, so she doesn't see it as that big of a deal. And I think, imagine your wife comes to the closet and says, "What do you think about this?" I don't know. I don't think that does that much for you. You're not going to do that. I mean, if you do that, then your wife is never going to wear that shirt again, ever. She'll burn it, and then she'll bring it up constantly that you ever even made that comment. It's like that. Only on an intimate level, 20 times, okay, so this person's, we're not going to work. It's not going to happen anymore. And then topple that with, I get where the writers put all the plot points. For me, my favorite part, which is the part that, again, all these top 10 websites love to, zoom in on, saying it's not enough. For me, it was. The music change was there. The flip in the brain was there. It was a light switch effect. It wasn't a slow descend. It was... It happens. She's on that dragon. All that distress. Everything's just sitting there. And it's not like she contemplated or planned this. It was in this moment, I've won. And I guarantee you something in that brain fired and said, now what?
Yeah.
Screw this. This is not... Yeah. And she turned to a heel right there. And that's what upsets so many people, is because she does this just no. You're like, what? And that's amazing writing to me. And I know that all those people are like, well, they just did it for the shock value of that. But I mean, you can go through. They didn't sit down when they were writing season 8 and go, hey, we're going to make Daenerys a bad guy this season. Everybody good with that?
The way I feel about it is, you knew that she was eventually going to turn. She was going to have to at some point, or she was going to just ride into the sunset.
She was going to be the one on the throne at the end,
which would have given Jon a choice to either stand with her and rule, or to ride off into the sunset himself. There couldn't be both of them up there.
Which is the anatomy behind the whole aunt versus nephew thing too, because if the writing itself, what you just explained, is perfect. And then you plug into that, just the offness that you're going to have there.
Yeah, except for, and this is what my buddy was talking about, because my friend Terrence is your friend.
Duncan.
He's got all of the lore. It's the Targaryens are always inbred. There was no, all of them are inbred.
Right.
There's no, incest is not a big deal in that world.
But that's what...
And even the whole thing with Jaime and... Cersei is, it's not the fact that the children are incest. It's the fact that they're not Baratheons.
Right.
They have no claim to the throne.
Right. They're legitimate children.
That's what started the whole the whole thing.
But the thing about, of course, we get to the anatomy of Game of Thrones. But Rhaegar, Jon's father, is, he was with the Princess of Dorne, which is not a Targaryen. Mm-hmm. And he then left. He got a taste of, I guess, something that wasn't his
own blood.
His own blood, and then he saw this woman at the Trident, at the tourney, and was like, oh, okay, well, this was my family set this one up, but that's what my heart desires, and it wasn't something in his blood. He was this black sheep Targaryen. Even Daenerys talks about him singing in the courtyards to people, and he just was not your typical Targaryen, which is obviously evident in Jon's DNA.
Right.
He's not a gray character. Mm-hmm. He's white as snow. He's the good guy. And it's it's so tragic that there, even if it was all aligned, if she would have killed Cersei, landed her dragon at the top of the Red Keep, they would have stormed through, everybody surrenders, these people get put in jail, everything gets liberated, she sits on the throne, like you just said, there's no way that he was going to be like, alright, I'm going to sit here with you. Because I think in his moment there, and his kiss and his last plea, wasn't of, I really love this woman, as much as it was, I love the idea of what was going to happen for us, but I also got to use this to take care of what I need to. Mm-hmm. Because if Tyrion wouldn't have planted that in his brain, he would have just stayed in the shadows, and then slowly, either wouldn't matter, just went, alright, I'm going to creep my way out.
Yep. Yeah, he would have just left.
You know.
Well, that was the other thing, too, was, I don't want to say it, well, I did watch the after thing, and the whole thing with Jaime, where he's laying there with Brienne, and she's all got heart bubbles, and he's like, "Yep, this ain't gonna work."
He's just staring at the ceiling.
He had the good life. Like he escaped. He walked away. He was on the side of the good guys. He helped them defeat the Night King. Like,
but he did that because he said he would, and he was trying to redeem his honor of like, I'm going to go up there. We said we'd fight the dead. What my buddy
Terrence was saying is like, Jaime's probably, other than Jon, Jaime's probably one of the most honorable people in the in the entire series.
That bath scene back in season 4, when he's sitting there in the bathtub, and I guess they just got back to King's Landing, and they're cleaning him all up, and he's sitting there with Brienne, and he just starts, describing the burn them all, and all. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a gut wrenching scene. It's amazing.
Well, and like Terrence was pointing out, he's got a bad reputation, but he's known as the Kingslayer, but he saved King's Landing that one time by being the Kingslayer. And then,
which something Jon would have done. Which something Jon did.
But he's also the, as far as Cersei goes, he's up until Brienne, which at that point there was no going back to Cersei. There was just like it was over with. I mean, they're going to die. Right. This is like the last night on Earth. The wall's fallen. Yep. The dead are coming. We're done. I've made my decision. Whatever. But he was a good father. Yep. He's a loyal husband. He was a loyal knight. I mean, he did what it took to survive, and he fought for the realm through the whole thing. He was very honorable. He pushed Bran out the window. He was a bad guy, but I mean, he was a jerk.
He wasn't. He was a great character. Yeah. I mean, by perfect design, and there's so many of them in the series.
But the ease with which Cersei was toppled, I guess, was kind of another thing, was that she's been built up as this huge big
she's supposed to be the next Ramsay, the next Joffrey.
She's going
she didn't go out like it.
She just sat there and watched everything crumble around her, and she. Again, if there had been another season, or at least a few more episodes, where she could have gotten, either captured, right, made to answer, or have some of the mountain's magic. Maybe she's got an army of those dudes somewhere that you didn't know about, and the only reason the Unsullied have no problem with it is because they just fought the dead. They're okay with it, but they, you could have had a little bit of a back and forth. It just seemed that King's Landing, being the goal of the entire series, fell so easily. Yeah, it took it was really hard to get there, but once they got there, it just kind of like.
Yeah, once she started taking out all those scorpions on the perimeter. Yeah. But I'll transition so we're not just on season 8. So, my top 10 Game of Thrones moments. I had to think about these pretty hard. I had since we're on the subject of her, I think my number 10, and these are pretty much in order, I think, for me. Close. We could interchange a few if I had a gun to my head. But number 10 would be Dracarys. Every time it's said, it gives me goosebumps, including Missandei's last words. But my favorite one will always be the slave master having little Drogon on his arm, and she's just like, Dracarys.
Yeah.
Boom! It's like, yeah!
Because he's so little.
Yeah, he's so little.
That's the thing, too, but he's so strong. Like, he's...
Yep. I was wanting so bad, when Jon was on the dragon, to hear, Jon Snow be like, Dracarys!
Heard something.
But, obviously he was probably giving him the command. We just never got the camera shot of it. I think my number 10 would be Tyrion's confession, man. That was one of the times I think I welled up the hardest in the series, is when I'm on trial for being a dwarf, for being, I'm not on trial here for Joffrey. Mm. Peter Dinklage's performance in that episode is just gut wrenching, man.
You know what's awesome about him is watching him in Elf.
Yeah,
because he's still a phenomenal actor, but he's like dressed in a regular business suit,
right?
And he's just like this hard driving, like executive
right.
kid book writer, you know. But he's still got that command presence, and you know, and you watch him, and you're just like, ooh. What time is going to do to you, man? Like, you have no idea how awesome you are.
Dude, I think number 8 for me is Hold the Door. That his character, that was a good character arc from start to finish. Very well-rounded, bow on it, packaged up. The only thing I really, really was wanting, and I said this on one of the other Game of Microphones podcasts I was on, there was a scene when Arya is sneaking around in the library during the Battle of the Long Night. And they did this like when the White Walker zombies are going, or the Whites, not the White Walkers. I've been corrected on that enough times now. When the Whites are coming through, there's this shot for a second where like it looks like this giant one passes one of the bookcases. I'm like, oh my god, she's gonna round the corner and it's gonna be freaking zombie Hodor, dude.
That would have been awesome,
dude. That would have been epic, man. That would have been like moment. I mean, because that would have stunned her. Like, right, he would have been able to get his hand on her throat, like, because that's just one of those. Oh shit! You know, because I don't know how much Brannis told her at that moment. Obviously, he's dead.
Yeah.
But how and what? You know, that would have been kind of cool. Speaking of the Mad Queen, freaking Cersei dropping the Sept of Baelor. God, that was epic. That was such a good scene. I mean, not light switching a ton of characters. You know, all the Tyrells, freaking. The Sparrows, like all those characters that were in there, gone. Their storylines lit up in green fire, man.
That was pretty awesome,
epic, dude.
And that's another reason why her fall was so it was like disappointing, because you wanted her to have something like that as a backup.
Yeah,
because you know,
well, you could see it. It was there because when dragons lighting it all up, you could see where
the explosions,
explosions of green fire coming up through, I guess, the caches of wildfire they hadn't found that Daenerys' dad had put up there. So from the grave, he's inadvertently helping her still destroy the city. The Red Wedding, but everybody knows the Red Wedding. Obviously, that's what made this show. Like, as far as it took it from being this really cool show on HBO to, oh my god, you got to see this. But if you get a chance, watch The Red Wedding, and then watch Arya get her revenge. Those episodes back to back, because we had to wait tons of seasons for that. I did that during the rewatch with Game of Microphones. I watched it and I was like, because there's no music, it just goes to black with the credits, nothing, and you get that pit in your stomach. Like, wait, where's when my HBO go up? All right, there's a revenge on Walter. It's so awesome to play those 2 episodes back to back.
That was before. I mean, the Red Wedding obviously happened before Arya went to the to train, and so you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
When when Walter Frey walked in, like, you didn't know what was about to happen, and when he starts, I mean, you've seen it, Pennywise. When he, I mean, because she's holding it together, but she's also really having fun. And kind of when Pennywise has his face and his face starts going off just a little bit, like his eye starts trailing. Yeah,
she's doing that above the table. Like
the actor who played Walter Frey did that a little bit. He's just kind of like he's not quite there. He's waiting for them to drink that poison. He's got that like little grin. And then she pulls off her face, and you're just like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen."
Oh, dude,
that was probably one of the most satisfying scenes in the whole series.
Definitely,
you're correct.
I had to put that up there. That's my number 6. Which, as much as I love that, which I thought they did a very good job of in season 8, is rounding out. My number 5 is the Hound and Arya, just over the whole series, from the moment of her just being a little girl with her needle and the skirmish they have in the tavern over the chickens, all the way up to them in that map room and him going that way to Clegane and her like taking that. I mean, that last push he shoves on her, like, go, this is not the life you want, that kind of thing, which is awesome because I mean the Hound was never going to be the Leif Erikson or the Christopher Columbus of the Westeros universe, and now Arya is. So it took that push her back into what she had said early in the series she'd want to do.
Yeah, go explore.
So her mind, like, he watched all of, like, in that moment, kind of purified the darker side of her out, which I love. I mean, it's still there. She needs those skills.
The whole time he was with her, though, she was running through her list.
Yep.
And he was on it.
Yep.
But she didn't have any power over him. Like,
yep.
She was weak. She was not a contender.
Right.
And he saw where she was going, because he was a right-hand man to Joffrey. He knows evil. Right. And
he's the little brother of Sandor. I mean, of the Mountain. So
so he's I would say he was dark at the beginning, but he turned good pretty fast. Like, especially when you hear his history, like a lot of his badness was circumstantial.
Well, yeah, like the butcher's boy and stuff like that. And again, I was like, you're just writing off the butcher's boy. I mean, it's when you got Joffrey telling you to do something,
you do it.
You do it. I mean, Ned's all, why'd you write down the butcher's boy? And of course, he's going to give this snarky ass, I'm the hound response. But he feels bad for it.
Yeah.
And
but his redemption arc went up, and he was. There's a montage of the Hound. Have you seen it on YouTube?
Yes. Oh, like
he's just
it's all of his insults. Stepping cunt. It's so bad, man. It's so great.
Was it whenever he's like, so did you see so and so? He's like, did he look like a cunt? Dude, that's awesome.
Dude, he's so good. And he doesn't watch the show at all.
Really?
He's one of those actors, like, doesn't watch his performances, doesn't know the lore, hasn't, which makes it all the better. Like, he's just, okay, this is how the director wants me to go. He's a professional actor. He's not like, oh, I was always a fan of the show, and now I finally got on it, kind of thing. Or I read the books, once I found out I was casted, I went back and dove in.
Mm-hmm.
Just
went
to work, yeah. Number 4, the Night King dropping the wall with Viserion. And have you listened to the Florence and the Machine?
Mm-mm.
They did Ginny of Oldstones.
Oh yes.
Okay. Well, Benioff and Weiss had to write a second verse for the song because there's only one verse in the books, and so the walls did crumble and fall. And when you watch the lyric video, it shows like right when they put those lyrics on the screen, it's Viserion just dropping the wall, like that callback to that shot from season 7. And it's gut wrenching, man. Like, to the point, like, I don't know how many times I've played it in the car and stuff. Like, my daughter walks around singing it. So it's very, very cool scene. I mean, it's just him flying right towards the camera. So epic.
The blue fire was badass.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that whole thing. I mean, I guess when I like trying to stay with the positive, but like I remember when that was done, people were just up in arms about where did they get the chains to pull this dragon out of the water. Like, that's to the show's defense, a lot of the people in my circles that was saying stuff like that were the ones that were just absolutely, I'm done, I can't believe this, like, just totally pissed at 8. So there was no way you'd ever please them. It wasn't going to happen. You just can't.
Well, see, this is one of those things, like, and not to get off of Game of Thrones, but we'll talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, another episode.
But the people that can't be satisfied, right? It's like there are parts of all of those movies, every single one. There are parts in those movies that are stupid, and if you take that part and judge the whole rest of the movie by that part, you're not going to like it.
Yep. Or the Jar Jar thing, like judge the whole. Star Wars went out the window because of this one character,
and
that's one of my daughter's favorite characters.
With Game of Thrones, like I never, it did occur to me like where'd they get those chains? But then I also remember that meme. Remember the daily, the demotivational posters, and it's got a pyramid, and it's like you can accomplish anything with endless supplies of slave labor. Yeah, where do you get the chains?
You make them.
You tell some of your people to go get them.
Right. Or you go get them. Or, I mean, how do you know, like, what, I mean, we know that White Walkers themselves, not whites, but White Walkers themselves, that normal fire doesn't hurt them. We learned that. So you can still technically forge stuff. You look at something like
Or if Bran
Hardhome
can see the future. Yeah. And he and the Night King can kind of communicate with one another.
Yeah.
then the Night King probably knew that he was going to need some chains.
Yep. There you go. All right, so my number. Let's see. So the Night King dropping the wall. I'd probably say my next really, really big one for me was the whole mystique. My number 3 would be the Red Woman. Like and I'd mean like the religion of Valor. That whole I play this game called The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and they have like this faction that's going around, and it's funny because they're burning witches because they're bad to the god of fire. So it's kind of like instead of a fire witch, that kind of thing. So you can tell it's like that makes more sense because the video game's just taking the old school Salem thing and slapping it into this video game, where George was smart enough to like, let's flip all this on its head. Mm-hmm. Let's have this witch who goes around burning people who don't believe in the witch god. It's like, it's genius.
Right.
It's like, why did I think of that? It's so epic. I mean, and just from her introduction with the maester that was working for Stannis in the beginning, and then her just sipping the poison and it doesn't hurt her, to the whole mystique of her pulling her necklace off and being like 300 years old and a big sack of old fat and just withered out and gray hair, and then just a wisp falling into the snow at the end. That's another one. Bow on it. Beautiful freaking arc.
Yeah.
A very gray character. I mean,
she killed innocents.
She burned a child alive, but she
thought she was doing it.
She came in as like the ex machina, lighting up all the freaking blades, which were for naught in the end anyway. But they're still. She was the push to Arya to go kill the Night King. I mean, so integral in the story. Mm-hmm. But the whole religion as a whole, I mean, with Beric Dondarrion, them lighting their swords up, and like that whole, I say the Red Woman, I guess is point number 3, but just the idea of the fire god and all. To me, like out of all, like the God of Seven, the old gods in the woods, like if you need any proof of what God really exists in that world, it's that one. You know, it's like seeing is believing. There you go. I love that. I love that aspect of the show. My number 2, getting close to the top. Speaking of fire, Kissed by Fire, one of my favorite story arcs, and going back to Virginia of Oldstone's lyric video. If you have not seen that, go watch that when you're done listening to this. It's so good, because in the moment where you see Jon Snow cradling somebody, it's not Daenerys, it's fucking Ygritte. And I mean, for one, she's just a gorgeous woman, but I love like that character. Mm-hmm. Like just this, you meet her, you pretty much learn everything you need to know about her and her cycle in the series, and then when she goes out, it's just epic tragedy.
Yes.
And it's just beautiful. And that's his love. And to the point that, and there's people who've already done it on the internet where they put it side by side, the way he's cradling Daenerys at the end, the way he's got it on his leg right there where he's got her pulled up, is the same way he was holding Ygritte at the Battle at the Wall. And I love that parallel, because, I mean, yeah, he did love Daenerys, but it's just like the way they hearken, like they did not, and when they do a lyric video for the season 8, but they still go back and plug that shot, and they take the time to plug, because that's momentous. I mean, that was his real first love. I mean, and I love her character. I just love her quips. I love, like, you know, how ruthless she could be, but
she was also, as a wilding too, she was not raised in the hierarchy of the Seven, so she didn't have.
She's free.
Yeah, she didn't have any of the pretensions or anything.
Right. She didn't feel lesser.
No, she was just a person.
She was a warrior. That's what people are like, I can't believe John's just riding off at the end of the show and then it just ends. It's like, for one, it ends in the exact same clearing where all those people get killed in the very first part of the scene 1 of episode 1, which to me as a showrunner, I have major props for. They managed to make sure the last shot of Game of Thrones is him riding in the exact same clearing where that circle of bodies was made from the White Walkers in episode 1. That's epic to me. Mm-hmm. 2, he's gonna go find Ygritte's freaking sister out there and fucking happily ever after, people. Come on. I love her storyline. I like the you know nothing obviously became a coined phrase, catchphrase of the show, but she's just such a good actor. oh, what's wrong? You freeze your balls off. She's just such a good character.
Yeah, she was awesome.
She
married her too. So.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. There was a really good. I don't watch him that much just because it gets like super super political for my taste. But there's I don't know if you ever saw the Saturday Night Live with Kit Harington. It's worth watching.
Okay,
because she's like out in the audience, like, you're unemployed now. You're gonna go get a job. It's just so hilarious. Like she pops up, like like they do their monologue in the beginning of Saturday Night Live, and
she's a whole bunch heckler, of basically.
Yeah, she's a heckler, and then I think Emily Clark is out in there. So Amelia Clark's out there. So they have a bunch of like people just. The guy that plays Samuel is out in the audience too. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're just all in their normal clothes. Like,
yeah, they look weird.
So he's all hosting the show, and they just keep like popping up and just like roasting them like every second. It's pretty. It's cool. And then of course they do a couple of like knockoff Game of Thrones skits in the episode. So it's worth watching. It's not as political as all there. I guess my number one, hands down, is the Battle of Hardhome. That is that moment from beginning to end, especially at the end where like his boots are just clicking across the dock and everybody's dead, and then he raises his arms. That is the pinnacle of awesomeness in that series for me. I mean, it just sets up. Oh my God, the
threat is real. Yeah. Like
yes.
This is bigger than anybody ever thought.
And you got your little bits of hope in there, like them hitting them with the dragon glass and one of the lieutenants like dispelling into the air. So it's like, okay, hey, you can kill them. And then like right when you got that hope, it's like, oh crap, but they can do that too.
Yeah. Well, and then whenever in
super necromancer
in the end in the Long Night where he starts raising the fallen of Winterfell.
Epic.
Like he wasn't raising his own dead; he was raising theirs.
Exactly, and you see,
it's like, oh no!
Yeah. It's like Wave 2 in like a video game. Here we go. Now do this. You see Dolores Ed's fucking eye just, Oh man, I loved it. I mean, I know that we set ourselves up for these expectations, and I guess for me being a book reader. I'm about to go on my Game of Microphones journey. If anybody wants to join us, I think starting next week or week after us, she's going to start reading Blood and Fire, and I have the book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it along. They're doing 2 chapters an episode, so I'm going to actually read along because after I get to read my chapters, I get to hear hours of commentary about it. Like, what do these people think? So I'm going to start doing that. That'll be my first book because I never read the Duncan Egg novellas or any of that stuff, so it'll be my first book outside of all the other books. But the issue that I have, or that I don't have, that it feels like a lot of other people seem to have, is separating them. And I don't have that problem.
The books and the movies?
Yeah, that's why I'm still able to sit down and I guess I'm still watch The Walking Dead. Yeah, I've read every comic. Well, up until the last probably 8 months, because I know what happened. Anyway, I'm not going to say that. Big things happen in the comics for The Walking Dead, and I've been spoiled on it because of the internet already, but I'm not to that point. But anyway, I didn't sit down and watch. I sat down and watched the first season of The Walking Dead. I binged it on Netflix back in 2011 or whenever it was, and then from there, from season 2 forward, I watched them every Sunday as they were released with all the dumb commercials and all. And same thing with Game of Thrones. I binged the first season, and I think 2 episodes were already out. We binged those 2, and then we started watching it every Sunday from there on out. So I was able to, in the off seasons, I ended up reading every single Walking Dead comic and got caught up by the start of season 3. And with same thing with Game of Thrones. Start of season 3, I'd already gone through every book. So nice. I was, and those are in audio book form alone. They're like 56 hours long, one novel. So it's a lot of time investment, and I think that's why so many people get so upset. They can't draw that line between them, and I look at them kind of like we were talking about Ready Player One before we started recording. And I think the reason why I can still catch enjoyment out of so many of these mediums where other people were like, oh, that sucks, or I wasn't able to get into this, or is because I'm able to look at it like a complete different story. I mean, think about how popular comics are, right? Mm-hmm. And how many stories of Spider-Man have been told? How many iterations of Superman have we seen? It's not like it's one linear thing like, well, Superman did this that one time with Lois Lane, so that contradicts what he's... No, you would never do that.
That's the thing with canon, and I generally don't have a problem it's funny because now my 8-year-old has started learning to read. She's learned to read. She's starting chewing through novels like quick.
Good, that's good.
She's tearing through books like you wouldn't believe. But the rule is, if you want, because she likes Harry Potter. If you want to watch a Harry Potter movie, you have to read the book first. She was so pissed, right?
Right.
So this is what happened when she was like 5 or 6. My wife started reading her the first one. She didn't know how to read, so my wife read her the book. And when it was over, she was able to watch the movie. Mm-hmm. But since she hadn't read it herself, she didn't kind of really notice. And plus, the first Harry Potter movie is the most complete.
Yeah, because it's a very linear story in that first one.
But she read the second one. Actually, my wife read the first half, and then she figured it out, and she took and read the second one. And it was so cute because I was like sitting on the couch, and she's in her room reading. She's supposed to be asleep. She comes in here, she's like, "Daddy?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Is it true?" I was like, "What?" She's like, "Is Tom Riddle really Voldemort?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "That means, oh no!" And she goes and runs back in her room to keep reading. And it was just perfect, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
So then she watched the second movie, and then she was mad because it was missing stuff. Mm-hmm. And then she read the third book. It took her about a week. She's 8 to read Prisoner of Azkaban, and she watched the third movie, and she's like, "Why do they keep leaving stuff out?" She's not mad that she's just mad that there's stuff that's missing from the stuff in her head that's not there.
But she's 8.
Well, she is,
right?
And but that's I get that because and a lot of critical stuff with like Stephen King novels. Mm-hmm. It's like you go back and you look at some of the critical reviews of Stephen King movies, they're horrible, but you had top directors. You had Kubrick. You had Carpenter. Right. You had Cronenberg. You had like A-list, top tier.
But you're so
movies.
vested in this world you've read that you can't.
But they had to do a Cliff Notes version, other's the movie would be 8 hours long.
Right.
So you have to be able to separate it out.
And this is
especially with Game of Thrones.
This is my argument with that kind of stuff. If there was a 8-hour It or 20-hour It, people are going to be like, "Oh, well, in the books, the way that door opened was..." You'll never do it.
Of course, you'll never satisfy them.
It's not possible, and I cannot get over that somebody. I'm just glad I don't have that problem. Like, I don't have that ability. Like, my brain doesn't function like that.
I go different ways.
I'm not sitting in the theater going like I literally did not go and see Ready Player One when it was like an IMAX. And I wish I would have, because the critics just ripped it a new one. Stupid movie, nothing like the novel. I'm like, okay, all right, moving on. And I don't know why I did that, because I don't normally do that with things. Luckily, it was still in the Dollar Theater right here at NASA Road. And I went and saw it in the Dollar Theater like 3 times. I'm like, this movie is phenomenal. Why are people so angry? And then I went back and read the book. I'm like, okay, they didn't do this. They changed this up with this character. But, I mean, the book is amazing and the movie is amazing. But if you put them together on a compare and contrast chart, yeah, of course the movie's going to suck.
The book's better.
Yeah, the book's more in depth, that kind of thing. But
well, I think we need to wind this one down.
Yeah, that was good
because we got to get that will be the exit music for the movie. But thanks for joining us on Game of Thrones. Scary Dad Podcast.
Yeah, keep it scary, everybody.
We'll see you later.